The national parks holds a treasure of mystery between missing persons and strange unidentified sightings and other bizarre phenomena. We're nowhere near even scratching the surface of what truly lurks inside these parks. There is something in the deep woods. But before we get into today's video, make sure to go ahead and slap that subscribe button for mysterious and supernatural storytelling 7 days a week. Let's do it. On February 14th, 2022, a 64-year-old Gail Stewart went mysteriously missing. She had simply gone for a walk near her home in Reno, Nevada, and was later on reported missing when she did not return to her home. After the authorities were contacted by family and friends, a search then ensued. Authorities, friends, and family searched the entire area of the Coughlin Ranch, Alum Creek, and Truckee River in hopes of finding some trace that Gail Stewart was ever here. But to no avail, they did not. After the group had spread out more beyond the original grid of the search, one of the members in one of these search groups had happened to peer over a nearby cliff, and there was Stewart, just dangling there, gripping onto a tree. Fortunately for her, she was rescued, but by the time that they had got to her, she was already unresponsive and showing signs of hypothermia. She was also missing one shoe, and friends, family, and search rescue personnel were unsure of whatever adventure she had gone on. It must have been a wild one because she only had one shoe and they weren't exactly sure what happened to the other shoe. Authorities, friends and family, and search personnel are all baffled how she became in this situation in the first place, and that she had seemingly sustained injuries on her knees, legs, and feet. Fortunately, after being taken to a hospital and her injuries treated and looked over, she was released, happy to be alive and ready to go home to see her friends and family. Now, call it a coincidence or call it fate, but the same woman, Gail Stewart, 64 years old, went missing yet again a month to the date on March 14th, 2022 to go take pictures at the Hoover Dam, over 400 miles away from her home in Reno, Nevada. She had simply just wanted to take some snapshots and photography of nature and the scenery around her because the Hoover Dam recreation area is very beautiful and breathtaking. In fact, it's so much so that it is a very popular tourist attraction, garnering almost 7.5 million visitors going through the same park every year. And a park of this size, sitting on over 150 million acres, it would make searching almost impossible. What's strange about Stewart's case is after she was alerted by the authorities and park ranger personnel that she had been missing, they began searching the area for her and had found her vehicle still left in the parking lot with her cell phone and her purse left behind, which was very strange to begin with. Could she have possibly wandered off through the recreation area and then something happened to her? Did she fall and slip? Did she go through a time anomaly? Was she taken? How is it that this woman just mysteriously vanished without a trace, leaving no signs whatsoever? Recently, Stewart's own son, Matthew, posted on his Facebook page saying, "Mom, wherever you are, I hope you're not in pain and I hope you found peace." Clearly distraught and traumatized from his own mother's disappearance. A family in heartache without any answers or conclusions as to what has happened to their loved ones. This same kind of situation is happening all the time with missing persons in cases around national parks all over the country, and it's not getting any better, folks. People are just disappearing without a trace, leaving nothing behind. Is it possible that Gail Stewart was just yet another one of them? Or was she taken, kidnapped, or did something more nefarious happen to her? This next one details the accounts of a 10-year-old boy who encountered something very strange, possibly a fae or fairy as they know. Written in the American Ethnology Report of 1898, the story details of a 10-year-old boy who had gone missing but was later found again, even though his circumstances were very strange and fortunately was not injured or hurt. At the time of his disappearance, a young boy by the name of Wofford, after practicing some archery for a while, he had the thought, hey, I could do some fishing around here and bring home a couple of good fish for my mom to cook for supper. And getting excited, he runs down to the river and he begins setting up stones in an attempt to try and trap some fish at the time, when out of nowhere, this mysterious, kind, gentle stranger comes out of the woods and starts talking to the boy saying, "Oh, you look tired, you look hungry, are you okay? Do you need any help?" Even though Wofford was put off by this stranger coming out of nowhere, his demeanor, his character, his body language was everything calm and persuasive, very gentle. And this is when he offered the boy to come back to his house to have wonderful amounts of food and dinner and dessert and laughing and fun. And being 10 years old, you're a lot more naive, so the boy just said, sure, that sounds like a great idea. And even though the presence of this person just coming out of nowhere was strange, the boy wasn't too off-put just by how gentle and calm this stranger appeared to be. So, the boy and this mysterious stranger decided to take a small walk in the woods, where they had arrived at this beautiful house. Wofford would later talk about the house and the condition that it was in. It was beautiful, very well kept, very brightly lit. It wasn't creepy or eerie at all feeling. In fact, it was so welcoming and warming that as soon as Wofford stepped in the house, any tenseness, nervousness, or apprehension he had immediately dissolved away. And as soon as he entered the house, he could smell the aroma of delicious food, desserts. There were people laughing and chuckling and singing. It was a wonderful place to be. And so Wofford sat down, ate his fill-in food, delicious food, mind you, had some great dessert, and he began too joining in with everybody else, laughing and playing. And during this time, while he was enjoying social hour, he noticed one of his neighbors who was also there with him, which just solidified to him, okay, well, if he's here, then I'm definitely safe and I could really let my guard down. Now, after a while of playing and having fun, he eventually grew tired and fell asleep for the night. After he had awoke in the morning, he had told the strange man who had led him to the house in the first place, I gotta get home. I'm sure my family's worried sick about me. They're probably panicking. And so the man smiled at him and led him out the house along a small dirt path. To the left was a cornfield, and on the right side was an apple orchard. Again, I want to emphasize just how beautiful and serene the house and the surrounding property was. It was like a little piece of fantasy land in the deep woods. And so this man is talking to this boy, leading him towards the end of the path, and he points off in the direction at the end of this path saying, if you go over this hill, which was a ridge and a river, then you'll end up back at your house. And so as the boy looked and went to turn around to say goodbye to the stranger one last time, he had somehow vanished. And here's where it gets even more crazy, because not only did this mysterious kind stranger vanish, but the scenery around him changed. No more was this stunning, beautiful apple orchard even existing, and no more was this cornfield there. Everything around him was deep, dense wilderness. In fact, the path they even walked on was now no longer there. And so now the boy's kind of freaking out thinking, what just happened? Where am I? And was fortunate enough to find his way back where he had heard people screaming his name, and turns out it was his friends and family who had been looking for him since the evening prior. When they had found him, they were more than happy to embrace him and love on their son and ask, what happened? Where have you been? And he very calmly explained, I had met this stranger in the woods. He took me to this house. I had delicious food and dessert. Oh, and my neighbor was there. And the same neighbor that was supposedly there at the house was one of the members searching for him along with the family. Now, this neighbor was looking at this kid as Wofford is explaining, yeah, I saw you there at the dinner party last night. You were enjoying yourself and laughing. And the neighbor looks at him strangely saying, no, I've been spending my past evening and morning looking for you. Where have you been? Wofford's tale is simply unexplainable, but many on the superstitious side or the paranormal side like to believe that this was a perfect example of the fae or fairy people. But of course, that is just speculation, while others believe that this was simply the case of a nanahi or a shapeshifter of some kind. But usually they're always synonymous with darkness and danger and evil. So for it to show kindness, and for what reason? And if that truly was the case, then why did it or he take him back to his house, feed him, give him food, give him comfort, and then just allow him to leave? It didn't really make sense. So if you're looking at it from a paranormal perspective, it could very well possibly be the fae. Or if you want to look at it critically and see a real-world example, he could just very well be making it up. But if he was making it up, then how do we explain where he had gone the entire night and day? Why would he go so far as to try and lie about his neighbor being somewhere that he didn't? The boy seemed very honest and adamant that this happened. If we were to look at this critically, how could we write this off as logically happening? While the story does present itself as extremely interesting, it's hard to really know what exactly this could have been. This next story comes from an anonymous submitter who had claimed that they had saw a man, they're not sure if it's a ghost or an apparition or a real person or what, come running out of the woods onto the road, clutching their bloodied shoulder and chest to only vanish. In the email, the man referred to himself as Jonathan and was claiming that one evening, him and his wife were going into Yosemite National Park. Now, he didn't exactly explain where in the park they were, but that it was evening time and the sun was setting pretty low into the sky to where it wasn't exactly pitch dark yet, but visibility was much lower than normal. And for when it sounds like in the emails that Jonathan and his wife were trying to look for the camping spot in which they had previously booked and that they were going to be staying at for at least 4 or 5 days. And as they're driving through the area, they come across a section where it's just trees on both sides of the road, which in any national park during camping areas is very common. And as this road is curving, they see a man in what looks like black slacks and a blue button-up shirt running out onto the road directly in front of their car, clutching his left shoulder with blood all around. The man looked completely in panic and terrified, but it all happened so quickly that when the man ran out in front of Jonathan's car, Jonathan was forced to slam on the brakes and go right through him, or so he described. He immediately stopped the car, put it in park because he had thought he had just ran over Jonathan. He jumps out of the car with his phone using it as a light, but doesn't see anything. In fact, there was nobody there. Completely frightened and confused and puzzled by this, he runs back in the car asking his wife, Did you see what I just saw? And she's just as equally frightened as Jonathan, saying, yeah, I did. Did we hit him? Like, what happened? But there seemed to be no trace of the mysterious man running out in front of the car. Jonathan was very disturbed by this sighting, and in fact, he went on to detail how him, nor his family, nor his wife have any past history of hallucinating, taking any mind-altering substances, or smoking weed, or drinking alcohol. In fact, this sighting was so vivid, he can recall exactly what the man looked like. He had short black curly hair, a clean-shaven face, a rather larger nose, and he seemed pale and covered in sweat. And he was convinced that this man was running from something or someone, and that he even remembered how hard the man was gripping his chest and thought he had either been shot or attacked and was seeking help. But as soon as this man ran out in front of Jonathan's car, he turned to meet Jonathan's headlights going right through him, and he managed to disappear. So Jonathan wonders, was this some apparition or possibly a dead person that was showing itself, possibly reliving its past over and over? Or was this just a random hallucination that somehow both him and his wife saw? Whatever the case is, it is surely disturbing, to say the least. Crater Lake National Park, while stunning, beautiful, and serene, holds its own dark mysteries and past, while, like many other national parks, is the grounds for many missing persons and strange disappearances, but also a lot of homicides. In the summer of 1979, a David Panabaker decided to take a job here as a seasonal park ranger. But Dave's interest peaked as he was told by fellow rangers and park personnel about a craft that had shown up there shortly after World War II, a Grumman F-6F Hellcat fighter that had somehow managed to crash land into this section of the park, but was unable to be retrieved and moved out. So there it laid, just sitting out in the wilderness for anyone to go see, if you knew where to go. Even though nature had mostly reclaimed this area where the plane had crashed, part of the White Star insignia could still be made out from the overgrowth surrounding it, and part of its machine gun was now embedded in the side of the cliff. Nobody knew exactly what had happened to the pilot. Most assumed he had either perished in the crash or had parachuted his way out, and nobody knows what became of him. So, in pursuit of wanting to see this plane, Dave Panabaker decided that taking a day off to go and see this plane wreckage would be really cool. So that's exactly what he did. And as he hiked and ventured off into the wilderness, he eventually lost track of where he was trying to find this plane wreckage. And he searched and he searched and he scoured, but eventually he did not find anything. And after some time, he realized that he was lost, and if he did not stop and get his bearings, he soon would become another statistic of a missing persons in the park. So that's when this young seasonal park ranger sat on a log and began to really think about what he was doing, where he could go, and how he can get himself out of this predicament that he had now found himself in. He still had not found the plane wreckage, and he needed to get out of here now. When he realized, while he was in deep in thought, something was looking at him, something that used to be living, because right in front of him, under a log, was the remains of a deceased World War II Hellcat pilot. Of course, all that remained was just a skeleton at this point, but immediately you can imagine the dread and nervousness and fear that Dave must have felt having his eyes fall upon this old cadaver that is years old at this point. David, probably beyond terrified and also intrigued, actually took the skull and was somehow able to find his way back because later on, when he had spoke to his chief ranger, who's not at all happy with him, by the way, since he had lost his way and almost became another missing persons, he simply showed his chief ranger the skull, and the chief ranger was astonished when David told his story. They had an entire naval investigation team come out using dental records to identify the person of the skull. The skull had belonged to Ensign Frank Lupo of New Jersey. It is said that Lupo had been part of a squadron of 7 Hellcats flying from Redmond to Red Bluff, California in 1945. All 7 of them had been struggling with visibility in the weather that day, since the clouds were much lower than normal, which had made visibility a lot more difficult. As the squadron flew in the ever-lowering fog of clouds that actually got at one point only around 500 feet above the treetops, all the Hellcats had emerged safely, except for one. They were missing one of their members. Ensign Frank Lupo had somehow probably crashed, or something had happened due to complete lack of visibility, and the rest is history. And this story actually has a positive end, as the Navy was able to return Ensign's skull to Frank's mother. And after 25 years of heartache and heartbreak and lots of questions, she was finally able to have answers and put her son to rest. If you guys enjoyed today's stories, be sure to go ahead and slap that like button and leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. And as always, if you're new to the channel, be sure to go ahead and smack that subscribe button like I've been telling you to do, and keep your notifications on because it greatly helps out my channel. And you'll get storytelling of the mysterious and supernatural 7 days a week. I mean, who doesn't want that? As always, guys, I love you all, keep an open mind, and I'll catch you all in the very next video.